Hey everybody, this is First Warn Storm Team Chief Meteorologist Brad. Have a happy Sunday, Labor Day weekend, and of course, it seems like every Labor Day we're talking about at least a tropical storm or a hurricane somewhere in the Atlantic, and the storm of choice this year is Hurricane Irma. We're keeping a close eye on Irma. Let me kind of lay out what's going on now and what we need to worry about and not worry about this far out. First things first, let's show you what the storm looks like right now. This is Hurricane Irma. It's a major hurricane, Category 3, which has 115 mile per hour winds out in the Atlantic. You can see the loop here. It's tracking southwest right now, which is expected to occur for a couple more days, maybe a day and a half, and then it should start turning west and then northwest. The interesting thing about Irma right now, while it's a powerful hurricane, it's also a small hurricane. The circulation center is very tiny, and that's actually served it well in the last couple of days because it's been surrounded by dry air. Because of that tiny kind of insulated little center, it's protected it from really that dry air from getting into the middle. So being a small hurricane now has actually kept it strong. If it was loosely organized or broader, it probably would have been kind of trashed a little bit by some of the dry air. And I'm going to show you that dry air. This is the water vapor loop, and I'll kind of move this over. You can see there's dry air wrapping around it, and it tried to wrap in yesterday, but because of that little core there, it kept itself intact. Now, this water vapor loop shows me a lot of what's going on. We've got a little upper low here. We call these tutlows in the tropics. There's another one back to the east, but just to the north of it, the driving mechanism is a high pressure system here, which is building south, and that's why it's moving southwest. What's going to happen is this little low, as it moves up this way, the high is going to kind of flatten out a little bit, and that should cause Irma to start doing one of these. Then the question marks start arising. So let me show you the track first. This is the National Hurricane Center track, and I plotted the hurricane force wind probabilities on here as well. I'll take the clouds off, and you can see the movement here. So just to give you an idea, here it is right here today. This is going to be where it's going to be in 12 hours. I'll show you when it enters Eastern Caribbean. This is going to be 2 o'clock on Wednesday morning. So that'll be Wednesday morning is the 6th. So this will be Wednesday morning. This will be Thursday morning. And this will be Friday morning here. So you can see in 120 hours, it should be somewhere in this area. Now, the thing to remember about these forecast tracks from the Hurricane Center, don't focus on the center line. I hate the center line. I really didn't even want to plot it, but I did just to be safe. The storm could be here or it could be here. This is the air. That's why it gets bigger over time. So the storm could be somewhere in here. Now, this is about the time that for the U.S. and the East Coast, we're going to have to start watching it carefully. Everybody on the East Coast still has a threat, but right here is when it's still going to be about 3 to 5 days out. Remember, this is Thursday night to Friday morning right here. So this is really early, and why we're not overly concerned right now, because we still have so much time. And I'm not saying don't prepare. The problem is it's exhausting to try to prepare and ramp up everything 7 to 8 days out. You want your preparation to build towards finality as the storm gets closer. You don't want to start at DEFCON 5 and then be stuck there for 5-6 days. Then you run out of energy and you can't do anything. So let me show you some of the model guidance. I'm going to pop up. I always like showing the spaghetti plots because it shows me so much of the spread in the guidance. So I'm going to plot them all out here, and I'm going to put all of them on here if I have enough of them. So here's a look at the latest spaghetti plots, and this kind of shows you what's going on. Really good confidence in the forecast. When they're clustered together like this means we have pretty good idea where it's going. When they start spreading out like this and even like this is where the big old question mark happens. There's going to be a lot going on as it gets closer to the U.S. that makes this kind of problematic. But we're going to get one of those curving storms like we saw with Matthew and Joaquin and Earl. I think we had a couple other ones that were really strong that we knew were going to recurve. But when you have a Mack truck heading at you, you always wonder, is that thing going to keep curving? Is it going to do this? Is it going to do this? It could even do a Sandy and do one of these because what's going on in the upper levels of the atmosphere. Let me show you the GFS model. And one thing that's really problematic with forecasting this storm is if you look carefully, I'm going to go out to Wednesday afternoon. You can't even see the storm. It's barely on the side of the screen. But look at this mega trough. I mean, this is going to feel great. This is going to feel like an early taste of autumn for us. So when you're forecasting these things, the hard part is people always focus on the actual storm. Not only do we have to forecast the storm correctly, let me back this up again. You have to forecast this trough correctly, you have to forecast this ridge correctly, and you have to forecast this correctly. So there's three moving parts all trying to move in concert on eventually how this is going to be steered. So as much as we focus on the storm, the forecast for the trough and the ridge are just as important as the forecast for Irma, because they're going to determine where Irma goes. So some of the questions I have is this trough going to really be this strong? Is it going to dig this far south? Because I'll be honest, this doesn't make sense. If there's a trough right here, this is going to want to do this. But you see there's a pretty good ridge to the north. So the location of those two, I mean, there's a path for this thing to kick northeast, and there's also a chance that this trough lifts out really quickly and leaves it behind, and then it gets trapped down there, and that's why the churn is much slower. Then it tries to follow the trough up the east coast. Now again, this is next Sunday at 2 o'clock, and it's still off the coast. So that's why, it's like everybody's freaking out now, and it's like we still got a week before this potentially impacts the east coast, if at all. And this is just one model. One of the things that I was looking at quite a bit is, the probabilistic, and this is really the way you should look at guidance. Don't look at a single run in here. Look at all the runs. And if you notice, all of them are hinting at this churn, but it's awfully close to the east coast. But in the same sense, when I see a couple going like this, even though this is one run and this is one run and this is one, that's a big spread. We want to see it clustered together like this. And just to reiterate this is just the forecast error in kilometers. You can see on the left here, forecast error in kilometer. 72 hours is a 3-day forecast. Most of the models, if you look carefully, have an error that's approaching 150 to 300 kilometers just in 3 days. So you can imagine at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 days. That's why in some ways you need to be cautious, and you also need to be prepared, because for every model that shows a landfall near you and you're preparing, there could be somebody that looks at that model and says, oh, it's not coming here, and they don't prepare. That's the danger of looking at long-range forecasts. A lot of people will sit here and tell you, oh, but this is going to help get people prepared. No, in some cases, it'll actually make people not get prepared, because for everybody that sees a storm heading their way, the people on this line might be preparing, but the people on this line may not. So that's why the long-range preparation and freaking out can be bad. But that being said, we're in the middle of hurricane season. Build your kit. You should have a hurricane kit right now if you live on the coast in a hurricane-prone area. That means 3 days of water, food, and supplies put away that won't spoil, that you can maintain and keep together. And as we get closer, if you want to add to that kit, you can. But this is honestly a kit you should have done back in June. I know a lot of folks wait till the last minute, the peak of hurricane season, right? But now is the time to kind of do that. We've got time to watch that. The good news today, hurricane hunters are going to fly one trip from St. Croix out there to give us some data. And then tomorrow, there'll be a couple trips and then an upper air trip, which will fly like this. And it will take samples of this trough and hopefully give us some upper air data that will help us out. So keep an eye on Irma right now. It's nothing to get too freaked out about, but it's something to keep an eye on. The best thing I can tell you right now is to just pay attention to the weather, especially if you live on the coast. This storm, like any storm in the middle of hurricane season, we have to watch very carefully, but we still have a week before it approaches the east coast or makes landfall, maybe 8 days. But by Wednesday, right in here, Wednesday, Thursday, we'll have a really good idea. So enjoy your Labor Day, get your kit together, and slowly build up. As things look like it's going to get closer, we can really ramp up our talk and really get closer to what we may or may not have from Irma. Remember, threats from Irma could be wind, surge, rain, tornadoes, and those could change based on the landfall. So don't just look at that line track. Figure out what the impact's going to be. Is it going to be a flood? Is it going to be tornadoes? Is it going to be wind? Or is it going to be surge? Or could it be all of those? So we'll keep you updated. I will do updates hopefully every day or so. I'll keep posting updates that matter. I'm not going to do every 6 hours to show you a model. That just doesn't do any good. We will show any major shifts or as new data, especially as the recon gets out there. As we get data from the recon, it will help the hurricane models quite a bit. I will actually trust them more. Everything we're getting right now are satellite estimates. Let's get some ground truth from the hurricane hunters, and that would really help us out quite a bit. Have a great Sunday. Enjoy it. Enjoy your Monday. And remember, we've got time. In the Caribbean, you've got about 3 days. Bahamas, you've got about 4 days, 5 days. The U.S., this is 7 to 8 days from us still. So enjoy your Monday, and I'll bring more as things kind of warrant.